first time my grandfather ever mentioned the Rockwall to me, I was probably 8 years old. We were driving through Rockwall late at night after a thunderstorm. The roads were empty, the trees were dripping rainwater onto the pavement, and I remember asking him why the city had such a strange name. Most people around here know the official story. Back in 1852, a farmer named Terry Wade was digging a well when he supposedly discovered a massive underground rock formation buried beneath the land. Over time, more sections were uncovered, and geologists claimed it was a rare natural wall of stone created by shifting earth thousands of years ago. That explanation became history. Schools taught it, tour guides repeated it, the city embraced it. But my grandfather just laughed when I brought it up. Then he looked at me and said something I never forgot. They lied about what they found under this town. At the time, I thought he was joking. I didn't understand why his face looked so serious. My grandfather died 3 months ago. After the funeral, my mom asked me to clean out his old house on the outskirts of town. Most of it was junk, old tools, rusted fishing gear, stacks of newspapers. But hidden beneath his bed, I found 3 leather journals wrapped in plastic. Every page was filled with maps, dates, newspaper clippings, and handwritten notes. At first, I thought it was dementia rambling. Then I started reading. The first journal began with Terry Wade's discovery in 1852. According to my grandfather, the settlers digging the original wells didn't find a random formation at all. They found smooth stone buried deep underground, arranged in a massive circle stretching farther than anyone could measure. The workers originally believed it was built by Native Americans centuries earlier, but the deeper they dug, the stranger it became. The stone wasn't rough like natural rock. Parts of it were smooth, flat, carved. Some sections contained markings too worn down to understand. Then the disappearances started. The journals described livestock vanishing overnight. Horses would refuse to go near freshly dug wells. Dogs would bark at the ground for hours before running off into the woods. One entry from 1854 described 2 workers being lowered into a newly opened shaft beneath the wall. Only one came back up. According to the survivor, the second man heard breathing somewhere in the darkness beyond the stone before his rope suddenly went slack. The survivor climbed out screaming and refused to ever go underground again. The settlers sealed the shaft the next morning. As the years passed, more strange incidents occurred around the county. Entire sections of farmland collapsed into sinkholes overnight. Families reported hearing vibrations beneath their homes late at night. Children claimed they could hear noises coming from storm drains after heavy rain. Every incident was quietly dismissed. My grandfather had spent decades collecting reports from local newspapers and old county records. Some of the clippings were real enough that I looked them up online myself. Several sinkholes actually had happened. That was the part that started getting to me. One journal entry from 1907 described a rancher whose cattle disappeared near a collapsed well south of town. The sheriff reportedly discovered something strange at the site. Not blood, not tracks, just an enormous groove in the dirt leading underground, as if something massive had dragged itself below. The sheriff supposedly ordered the well filled with concrete the same week. I kept telling myself it was all fake, until I reached the final journal. That one was different. The handwriting became shaky and frantic. My grandfather claimed he had spent over 30 years mapping underground tunnels beneath Rockwall County after hearing stories from older ranchers and construction workers. According to him, many modern buildings in town had accidentally uncovered sealed shafts during construction projects. Most were quietly buried again. One entry described a utility crew in the late 1980s discovering a hollow chamber beneath a neighborhood development before the entire site was suddenly shut down by the county. Another described workers hearing loud impacts underground while repairing sewer lines near the eastern side of town. But what disturbed me most was how the activity eventually stopped. No more vibrations, no more sinkholes, no more disappearances. For nearly 30 years, nothing unusual happened beneath Rockwall. My grandfather believed that meant only two possibilities. Either whatever had been trapped underground was dead, or it had escaped. The very last pages of the journal included hand-drawn maps leading to an abandoned property outside the city limits. At the bottom of one page he'd written, "The opening still exists beneath the old well. If you find this after I'm gone, you deserve to know the truth." I should have burned the journals. Instead, 2 nights later, I drove out to the property. The place looked abandoned for decades. The old farmhouse had collapsed inward, and trees had grown through the porch. Behind the house, hidden beneath overgrown brush, I found the well, or what was left of it. Concrete had been poured over the opening years earlier, but part of it had collapsed inward, revealing darkness beneath. Cold air drifted out from below. The smell reminded me of seawater mixed with wet dirt. I used climbing rope from my truck and lowered myself inside. The tunnel beneath the well wasn't natural. The walls were too smooth. At some point, someone had reinforced sections with ancient rotting wood beams that looked impossibly old. The farther down I went, the quieter everything became. No insects, no wind, nothing, just silence. Eventually, the tunnel opened into something enormous. I stood inside a massive underground chamber, and there it was, the Rockwall. Even in the darkness, it stretched endlessly in both directions beyond my flashlight beam. The stone surface looked ancient and worn smooth in places exactly like my grandfather described. But that wasn't the worst part. About 50 yards ahead of me, part of the wall had been broken open, not collapsed. Broken, and the stone fragments weren't scattered outward toward the chamber. They were blown outward from the other side. Something had forced its way through. I remember slowly walking toward the opening, while my flashlight shook in my hands. Behind the broken section was a tunnel so massive, I couldn't fully see the ceiling. The walls were scratched smooth, not by tools, by friction, like something enormous had traveled through it over and over for years. The tunnel sloped steadily downward, heading south. Warm, humid air drifted through it. That's when I realized something horrifying. The tunnel wasn't random, it was going toward the Gulf of Mexico. I stood there staring into the darkness when I noticed something beside the broken wall. Fresh mud, not dried, fresh. Then I saw the marks, huge grooves pressed into the dirt leading out from the tunnel and into the chamber around me. Something had come through here recently. My flashlight suddenly flickered, and somewhere far down the tunnel, I heard it. Not a growl, not footsteps, breathing. Slow, heavy, wet. The sound echoed through the tunnel, loudly enough to vibrate the ground beneath my feet. I ran. I don't even remember climbing back out of the well. I just remember reaching my truck covered in mud and nearly driving into a ditch trying to leave the property. I never told anyone what I saw underground. Who would believe me? For weeks, I tried convincing myself the journals were fake, that the tunnel was part of some abandoned mining project, that the breathing I heard was just wind moving through the passageways. But one thing kept bothering me. The tunnel wasn't random, it was heading south, directly south. A few days later, I went back through my grandfather's journals one last time, searching for anything I missed. That's when I found a loose page folded into the back cover. I don't know how I missed it before. The handwriting was shaky, like he wrote it shortly before he died. It said, "The wall was never built to keep people out." Below that was a second sentence, one he never finished. If the tunnel reaches the Gulf, that was it. No ending, no explanation. Just unfinished words trailing off the page. I haven't gone back underground since that night. But sometimes late at night, when the house is quiet, I think about that tunnel beneath Rockwall. about the scratches covering the walls, about the humid air coming from somewhere deep underground, and about the breathing I heard far below the earth, moving slowly south toward the ocean. Then I think about something else. For almost 30 years, nothing strange happened around Rockwall. No disappearances, no vibrations, no sinkholes. Like whatever had been trapped there was gone. And honestly, I don't know if that's better or worse. The journals stopped where the tunnels turned, as if the writer finally learned.